At a party 2 years after breaking up with my ex-boyfriend, his best friend suddenly asked me, "Do you still have feelings for Ethan?" I smiled and shook my head. Then I flashed the ring on my finger and the family photo on my phone's lock screen, saying, "I'm already married with a child." His friend sighed. Even Ethan's first love had pleaded with me to take another look at him. Because after I left, that aloof, untouchable man completely lost it. Everyone said Ethan was like an ice prince, impossible to warm up. It took me 99 confessions to finally win him over. I had to propose 66 times before he finally agreed to marry me. Later, I got married, but the groom wasn't him. Because right before the wedding, he hid from me his plan to have a child via IVF with his mentor's daughter, just to fulfill his mentor's dying wish of having a grandchild. So, I hid it from him too and swapped the groom. I changed Ethan's contact name in my phone to X I'm breaking up with and changed the contact for the guy my family introduced me to hubby. The next day, Ethan came back looking exhausted and drained. Only then did I find out he hadn't even had a chance to go through with the IVF. His mentor had passed away the night before. At the memorial service, he was busy taking care of the mentor's daughter, Chloe. After I paid my respects at the memorial altar, Chloe's mother helped me up. "You must be Ethan's girlfriend, right? Thank you for coming to see Mr. Davis off. I heard you two were about to get married." He's a loyal and sentimental young man, offering to observe a mourning period of half a year for his professor. "This must be hard on you." I just listened quietly, offering no opinion, nor did I mention the absurd plan Ethan and her daughter had cooked up. But Mrs. Davis seemed to sense my inner turmoil and couldn't help but sigh deeply. We practically watched Ethan grow up. Mr. Davis was his advisor all through college to his PhD. He's such a sentimental person, that's why he made this decision. Please don't blame him. Now that I had already switched grooms, I naturally wouldn't blame him. "I understand," I said. Seeing my seemingly understanding demeanor, Mrs. Davis spoke again, unable to hold back certain things. "And please don't mind Chloe. Even though she clings to him all day, I can tell he doesn't feel that way about her. He likes you very much." Hearing this, I stiffened slightly. "Likes me? I hadn't seen any evidence of that." Seeing my disbelief, Mrs. Davis continued earnestly, "Child, I'm not lying. Mr. Davis and I always thought he was so absorbed in medical research he wouldn't have time for romance. Until you appeared. Although he didn't show it outwardly, when he was with us, he'd casually mention you. He'd talk about bumping into you somewhere yesterday, or what delicious food you made for him, or what silly thing you did today trying to win him over. It always sounded like complaints, but we knew he just didn't realize his own feelings." Mrs. Davis recounted instance after instance of Ethan's attentiveness that he never showed me. But listening to these words now only felt ironic. Perhaps the old me would have been thrilled to hear this, but now, it just felt sarcastic. If Ethan truly loved me, why couldn't I feel it at all? Why was it always me chasing after him while he never stopped to wait? If he loved me, how could he agree to have a child with another woman? The moment he agreed to have a child with Chloe, everything became irreparable. It was truly, completely over between us. Throughout the memorial service, Ethan stayed by Chloe's side. It wasn't until the service ended, as rain began to fall and guests gradually departed, that he finally drove up to me, tossing out two emotionless words, "Get in." Just as I was about to step forward, the window slowly rolled down, and I realized Chloe was already in the passenger seat, with her mother in the back. Before I could say anything, Chloe's choked voice emerged, "Ethan, I still want to go to the cemetery to see Dad. Just me, you, and Mom, okay?" At this, even Mrs. Davis frowned first. "Chloe, don't be like this." But those few words seemed to hit a nerve, and Chloe burst into tears. "It's Dad's funeral today. Can't she just get a cab?" Mrs. Davis tried to intervene again, but Ethan had already made his decision. "I'll come back for you later," he said, turning to me, his voice leaving no room for argument. Then he drove off, the car speeding away. Left standing alone, I had anticipated this outcome the moment Chloe spoke. There was no trace of sadness on my face for being abandoned. I just waited there silently for hours. But he never came back. Watching the rain pour down harder, I knew he wasn't coming. The funeral home was in a remote location, impossible to hail a cab nearby, and I hadn't brought an umbrella. I had no choice but to walk out into the downpour. The rain fell harder and harder, blurring my vision. I walked in the rain for 2 hours before finally reaching a spot where I could flag down a cab and go home. That night, I developed a high fever. Ethan still hadn't returned. Burning up and delirious, I felt utterly weak, lacking even the strength to call 911. I forced myself to crawl out of bed, found some fever reducers, and took them with water. The medicine didn't work immediately. Lying back in bed, my body felt scorching hot and incredibly uncomfortable. I don't know how long it took before I finally drifted into a hazy sleep. A full day and night passed before my fever finally broke, and I finally heard the sound of the door opening. Ethan walked in, not even looking at me, saying nothing about not picking me up. He just silently started packing his bags. Only when everything was packed did he finally grant me a look. Chloe's condition is really bad. I'll be staying with her for the next few days. Call me if anything comes up while you're home alone. Watching him turn and leave immediately after speaking, I laughed bitterly to myself. Would calling even help? I was standing right in front of him, pale-faced, and he hadn't even noticed I was sick. Could I really expect him to leave Chloe and come back for me? Ethan truly didn't come back for the next few days, nor did he call. But I knew his whereabouts perfectly, thanks to Chloe, who loved sharing her life online. Every day, I could see from Chloe's social media updates what they were doing, like him making her porridge and peeling shrimp for her, or taking her out to cheer her up, watching fireworks. I didn't pay much attention to their activities. After recovering, I went to my company and submitted my resignation. Sarah, why the sudden resignation? Did something happen? Colleagues who heard the news were surprised. I just shook my head and explained, I've been away for so many years, it's time for me to go back to my own home. This explanation only puzzled my colleagues more. Finally, someone couldn't resist asking, then what about Dr. Evans? His family is here in Seattle. If you go back to your city, won't you be in a long-distance relationship? I paused slightly. See? Even my friends knew how much I loved Ethan, loved him enough to give up everything and settle in this unfamiliar city for him, loved him so much that everyone subconsciously assumed I was the only one who could make sacrifices in this relationship. And he took my devotion so utterly for granted, reserving all his patience and gentleness for someone else. I smiled and shook my head. It's not long distance. We're never seeing each other again. After handing over my work responsibilities, I packed up all my belongings and carried my boxes home. As soon as I walked in, I saw Ethan and Chloe sitting in the living room. What's this? He was startled to see me arrive with boxes and instinctively asked. My voice was calm, lies rolling easily off my tongue, my face showing no panic at being caught. The company moved offices, so I just brought my things back first. Moved where? Ethan frowned. Just as I was about to answer, Chloe interjected, Sarah, I've been really down since my father passed away, and I haven't been acting right. I even had that absurd idea about having a baby with Ethan. Thinking about it now, it was ridiculous. But nothing happened between Ethan and me. Now that Dad's gone, I don't need to have a child anymore. I'm sorry, please don't hold it against me. She put on a pitiful act. If I hadn't received that screenshot of a chat message dripping with provocation, perhaps I would have believed her. But now, I had no interest in exposing Chloe's little games. I just nodded faintly and carried my boxes to my room. I had just put the boxes down when I heard my phone ringing, but the sound was coming from the living room. I realized I'd left my phone out there. Just as I was about to go get it, the door was suddenly pushed open. Ethan stood there, his face dark, holding my phone, staring intently at me. Who is hubby in your phone? This was the first time I'd ever seen Ethan look like this. Over the years, he had always maintained that calm, composed demeanor in front of me. I almost thought he wasn't capable of jealousy. I remember when I was first chasing him, someone told me that pursuing someone required strategy. Clinging to Ethan every day like I did would make him accustomed to my presence but unaware of his feelings, and eventually, it would just become tiresome. I learned to play hard to get, deliberately avoiding him for a few days and even hanging out with other guys in front of him, hoping to see if he'd get jealous. But back then, when he saw me standing with another guy, his expression remained perfectly calm. He just walked past me as usual, not even sparing me a glance. That's when I knew playing hard to get might work on others, but not on Ethan. Later, we returned to our original pattern, him walking ahead, me chasing behind. 6 years flew by just like that. Now, I finally saw him jealous, but it was too late. I took my phone back. Just as I was about to explain, Chloe's voice came from behind him again. It must be her best friend. We girls often call our best friends hubby. Since Chloe had already offered an explanation, I didn't bother correcting her. I just took my phone and went back to my room, redialing the number. Ryan calling so suddenly, I thought it must be something important. But when he spoke, all he asked about were trivial matters. Have you eaten? It's been raining constantly in Denver these days. how's the weather in Seattle? Is it raining there too? I heard it's getting colder in Seattle lately. Make sure to stay warm, don't get sick. At first, I answered each question, waiting for him to get to the point. But he kept asking random things without stating his business. Finally, I couldn't take it anymore and was about to hang up. What is it you really want to say? If you don't tell me, I'm hanging up. Hearing this, he finally stopped beating around the bush. I just wanted to ask if you have any regrets, if you're really sure about swapping the groom. You beat around the bush this long just to ask that? I didn't know whether to laugh or cry. But Ryan replied with exceptional seriousness, his voice tinged with an almost imperceptible hint of hurt. Didn't you love your boyfriend very much? I initially wanted to ask how he knew, but then I thought about it. From the first moment I saw Ethan in college, to my relentless daily pursuit, the joy of finally succeeding after confessing, the daily self-absorbed devotion, and then the decision to marry, and now to switch grooms. My social media feed over the years had almost entirely revolved around Ethan. I had broadcast my love for him to the world, wanting everyone to know that Sarah loved Ethan deeply, deeply. Under those circumstances, it would have been hard for anyone not to know. I shook my head self-deprecatingly. My prolonged silence made Ryan's heart clench on the other end of the line, fearing that the next words he'd hear would be, "Yes, I still love him very much, so let's just forget about switching grooms." But soon, he heard my answer. "I don't like him anymore now." After a pause, I gave him another reassurance. "Don't worry. I said I'd switch grooms and marry you, and I won't regret it because of him." The call finally ended. When I finished packing and went out, Chloe hadn't left yet. She was in the living room chatting with Ethan about something. Seeing me emerge, his expression was still somewhat unpleasant. After hesitating for a long time, he finally brought up the contact name again. "Finished chatting with your friend? In the future, maybe don't use that kind of nickname for friends." I glanced at him in surprise, not expecting him to still be hung up on it. I nodded in response. No one knew if I was answering the first question or the second statement, or perhaps both. Ethan took it as my agreement, and his expression finally softened. This entire sequence of his emotional shifts was observed by Chloe. Instantly, her face became a canvas of complex emotions. Chloe hadn't expected Ethan to still possess a sense of possessiveness towards me. After all, in her scenario, he was supposed to be indifferent to me. "It's still early, Sarah, Ethan. Let me treat you both to dinner and a movie, as thanks for your tolerance towards me recently." Seeing her superficial smile, I roughly guessed Chloe's motive for this suggestion. It was undoubtedly to flaunt how well Ethan treated her, how gentle and doting he was in front of me. Thinking this, I shook my head. Firstly, I no longer wanted to play these childish games of rivalry. Secondly, my departure date was approaching, and I had a lot to handle. But how could Chloe let this opportunity slip? Seeing me refuse, she put on a wronged, pitiful expression and looked towards Ethan. "Ethan, is Sarah still mad at me? I know I was willful recently and did some ridiculous things. It's understandable that Sarah is angry with me. It's all my fault." As she spoke, her eyes reddened, making Ethan feel sorry for her. The next moment, his disapproving gaze turned towards me. I sighed. It seemed if I stubbornly refused to go, Chloe might just cry herself unconscious, and I would naturally become the unforgiving villain again. After some back and forth, I was still dragged out the door. It happened to be dinner time, so the three of us went to a restaurant first. The restaurant Chloe chose was a seafood place. As we sat down in the private room, I gave Ethan a deep look. He unnaturally avoided my gaze, and when he looked at Chloe, who was ordering, his eyes unconsciously held a hint of indulgence. Of course, Ethan felt guilty. After all, he clearly knew I was allergic to seafood, yet because Chloe said, "The seafood at this restaurant is especially delicious," he brought me here anyway. After the dishes were served, unlike me who only had a glass of water, Chloe was eating seafood that Ethan had meticulously prepared for her. She looked up at me, noticing I was just sipping water, somewhat puzzled. "Sarah, this seafood is really delicious. Are you sure you don't want to try some?" A sarcastic smile touched my lips. Just as I was about to speak, Ethan changed the subject again. Another plate of peeled shrimp was placed in front of Chloe. Her eyes immediately sparkled, and she thanked him shyly, forgetting the previous topic entirely. After eating, Chloe dragged us both to the movie theater. After much deliberation, she chose a horror film. It wasn't until we entered the theater that I understood her intention. Ah. I sat in the outermost seat near the aisle, listening to Chloe beside me constantly gasp and exclaim. One moment, she'd nervously grab Ethan's coat by mistake, The next, startled by a sudden ghost, she'd clutch Ethan's hand tightly, whimpering about being scared. Finally, she even left her seat and threw herself directly into his arms. Chloe's action made Ethan pause, frowning instinctively as he raised his hand, seemingly about to push her away. But after a moment's hesitation, seeing her reddened eyes and thinking of her deceased father, his professor, he ultimately lowered his hand. He turned his head and saw me looking straight at them, clearly having witnessed the scene, yet my expression remained unfazed. Sarah. He rarely called me by my nickname so intimately. Just as he was about to explain, I had already turned my head back to the screen, appearing completely engrossed in the movie, utterly indifferent to what had just happened. The explanation stuck in his throat, leaving Ethan feeling extremely uncomfortable. But a small gasp from the woman in his arms quickly made him suppress the strange feeling in his heart and gently soothe Chloe. And beside him, upon hearing his comforting voice, I let out a soft chuckle. Thinking that I wouldn't be returning to this city after going home, I decided to say goodbye to a few close friends first. I sent a message in our group chat. Let's meet up. There's something I want to tell you guys. The first to reply was Sophie, the friend I kept in touch with the most. She responded quickly, perfect timing, there's a class reunion in a few days. Let's do it then. I can make it. Me too. Everyone agreed to the suggestion. On the day of the reunion, I left early. When I arrived at the reserved private room, the others were already there. Seeing me arrive, they curiously asked, Sarah, you said a few days ago you had something to tell us. What is it? I'm going home in a couple of days to get married. I don't know when we'll see each other again after this. You're all welcome to come to my wedding. As soon as I said this, remembering the social media post I'd made recently, several people gasped. Sarah, that post from last time, you were serious? Yeah, seriously? Are you really breaking up with Ethan and going home to marry someone else? Does Ethan know about this? Just as the words left her mouth, the private room door opened again, and Ethan's voice followed, know about what? Seeing Ethan suddenly appear, everyone exchanged glances. Finally, Sophie broke the tension with a laugh, changing the subject. Who let the great talent Ethan in? Did you draw your card? Seeing his confused expression, she explained with a smile, Megan's been learning fortune-telling recently. Everyone has to draw a card so she can practice on us. Megan, who had been mentioned, indeed walked up to us with a deck of cards, her eyes gleaming with excitement. Quick, quick, one card each. I casually drew a card. Seeing that I had drawn, Ethan, who had been pushed along since entering, also agreed. Sophie, who first brought up the fortune-telling, chimed in, quick, quick, let our fortune-teller Megan see what cards everyone drew and if they're accurate. I was also a bit curious. I flipped the card over, and the words on it clearly entered my vision. Expectations lead to disappointment, seeking nothing leads to fulfillment. Looking at this sentence, I was momentarily stunned. It wasn't wrong. I returned the card to Megan. Seeing the words on the card, Megan patted my shoulder comfortingly. The first part might not sound great, but doesn't the second part suggest an unexpected pleasant surprise? Relax, don't worry too much about it. I nodded, watching as Ethan drew a card from the deck. He flipped it over, and the words on it made him freeze. The few people who saw it also fell silent, piquing the curiosity of the others. Someone took the card from his hand, saw the words, paused, and then stuffed it back to Megan. Fortune-teller Megan, looks like your skills aren't quite there yet. Everyone knows Sarah and Ethan have a stable relationship. How could Ethan possibly suffer eternal loss of love? This statement, however, made a few of my close friends look rather awkward. How could it be impossible? I was already planning to leave this city, leave Ethan, and marry someone else. But since most people present didn't know the situation, voices declaring Megan's cards inaccurate rose one after another. Amidst the joking and teasing, no one paid special attention to the few of us. Just then, a phone rang, somewhat faint in the noisy environment, but Ethan heard it immediately and answered. I don't know what was said on the other end, but his expression changed slightly, and then his gaze shifted to me. Sarah, come to the hospital with me. I didn't understand why I needed to go to the hospital, but seeing his grave expression, I didn't ask further questions and hurried out of the room with Ethan. The car sped towards the hospital. On stretches of road with traffic jams, his anxious expression and constant honking confirmed his inner urgency and unease. A 30-minute drive was shortened to just over 10 minutes. Arriving at the hospital, he didn't say a word and led me straight to the rooftop. As soon as we got there, we saw a large man holding a dagger, leaning against the railing, holding a terrified, tear-streaked Chloe hostage. When she saw Ethan appear, hope instantly flashed in her eyes. "Ethan, save me." I hadn't even figured out what was happening when a force pushed me forward from behind, and a familiar voice sounded, "Look carefully, this is my girlfriend. Let the one you have go. She's innocent and means nothing to me. Even if you kill her, it's useless. Only holding my girlfriend hostage will achieve your goal." Hearing Ethan's words, I finally understood. He had rushed me over here just to use me to trade for Chloe's safety? Combined with the murmurs of the onlookers, I pieced together the story of today's drama. It was simply a case of someone causing trouble at the hospital, likely someone who had been stalking them for days. Seeing Ethan constantly with Chloe, they mistook her for his girlfriend and took her hostage. I felt as if a bucket of ice water had been poured over me, cold to the bone. But behind me, Ethan continued to push me forward relentlessly. How ridiculous. My boyfriend spent his days with another woman, and when danger struck, he didn't hesitate to push me out to shield his mentor's daughter. The man looked at Chloe in his grasp and then at me being pushed forward. Perhaps because he had seen me during his surveillance, although still suspicious, his grip on the knife unconsciously loosened slightly. He warily scanned the surroundings, preparing for me to step forward for the hostage exchange. Unexpectedly, the moment he relaxed his grip, a group of police officers suddenly rushed out from all sides. Someone kicked the knife out of his hand with lightning speed, while others pulled Chloe away. The instant Chloe was out of danger, Ethan rushed to her side. "Chloe, are you okay?" Chloe, terrified, threw herself into his arms, crying uncontrollably. "Ethan, I was so scared." Only after confirming she was unharmed did Ethan remember he had just pushed me forward. Belatedly, he looked at me and asked, "Are you okay?" But the look I gave him now was completely lifeless. Ethan wasn't the type to explain much. Most of the time, he didn't care about anything. But seeing me like this now, his heart trembled slightly, and he found an unfamiliar emotion surging within him, a loss of control. "Sarah, people were already positioned nearby. As soon as you went over and distracted the attacker, the police would move in. It was just a plan." His explanation was logical, and I didn't refute it. Yes, it was just a plan, and I was unharmed anyway. But what if? As my boyfriend, could he really be so confident in risking his girlfriend's life to save someone else's? At that moment, looking at him felt like looking at a stranger. "Sarah, look, this is the man you threw everything away for, settling in this unfamiliar city for him. Do you regret it?" I think I did. Fortunately, it wasn't too late to make amends. After that day, Ethan said Chloe was traumatized from being held hostage because of him, and he couldn't just leave her, so he stayed by her side constantly. He completely forgot that I, too, had been pushed towards the attacker that day. Thankfully, I had already decided to give up on this hopeless relationship and wouldn't be hurt by him anymore. Left alone at home again, I slowly cleared out everything in the apartment related to Ethan. I had collected the wedding photos we took earlier, but now I took them all out of the frames, and then, one by one, threw them into the fire. Only after watching the flames consume the photos did I turn my attention to the other things in the room. In the past, to get closer to Ethan, I had bought countless matching couple items for him. From the toothbrushes and cups standing side by side on the bathroom counter, and the matching towels embroidered with the same cute pattern next to them, to the matching outfits hanging together in the closet, and the couple's bracelets in the jewelry box. I gathered all these things, put them in cardboard boxes, and threw them all out. From now on, I didn't need any of these things anymore. After throwing out what needed to be discarded, I started packing my luggage. I had once wholeheartedly considered this place my second home, wanting to fill every corner of the house with traces of myself. I always thought that this way, whenever Ethan saw those things, he would unconsciously think of me. Over time, he would eventually truly accept me, love me, and become unable to live without me. But even now, my goal had not been achieved. There were many things, so my packing speed slowed down. When Ethan came back in the evening, I hadn't finished packing yet. When he pushed open the door and walked into the room, the first thing he saw was the bed covered in clothes. His sudden entrance startled me. Just as I was thinking about how to explain the pile of clothes, I heard him ask first, "What's this? Are you going on a business trip?" My movements paused. I turned my back to him and continued organizing my things. Out of his sight, a sarcastic smile touched my lips. I had already quit my job, so how could I be going on a business trip? It seemed he had never even considered the possibility that I might leave him. But that was fine, I didn't want to explain much to him anyway, so I simply replied with a non-committal "When are you leaving?" Seeing me nod, Ethan didn't overthink it and casually asked, I thought for a moment. This part, I didn't hide. Tomorrow morning. Ethan didn't say anything else, turned around, left the bedroom, and took the initiative to cook dinner. He was a good cook, but rarely did it because of his busy work schedule. Therefore, the opportunities for me to eat food he personally cooked were extremely scarce. Recently, he had been cooking more often, but inevitably, all those meals ended up feeding Chloe. After dinner, Ethan took out a gift box from behind him and handed it to me. Seeing the gift box pushed towards me, I looked at him, slightly surprised. He rarely took the initiative like this. I didn't take the gift box he offered but asked directly, "Is there something you want?" "About last time, I'm sorry." Ethan hesitated for a moment, recalling my expression when I left the hospital, and finally apologized. I finally understood the reason for his unusual behavior today. But since I had already decided to let him go to Chloe, his protection of Chloe naturally had nothing to do with me anymore. My reaction was so bland that even Ethan was a bit surprised. But remembering what he wanted to say, he didn't dwell on it and continued, "Chloe's been in a really bad mood lately. I've taken some time off and plan to spend more time with her these next few days." As he spoke, he looked at my reaction again, but my face remained impassive, lacking the anger I used to show whenever I heard he was going to see Chloe. Sitting opposite him, my heart was calm. What reaction was there left for me to have? In the past, no matter what request I made, whether it was for birthdays, holidays, anniversaries, or when I was sick or injured, he would never agree to take time off to be with me. And now, Chloe was merely in a bad mood, and he proactively took leave to accompany her. What else was there for me to say? "Do as you please," I said. Seeing me toss out these 4 words and say nothing more, Ethan Rarald got up and hugged me from behind. "Sarah, Chloe is my mentor's daughter. She hasn't been doing well since her father passed away, and she was terrified by the recent incident. Let me just help her through this period, okay? I'll make it up to you later." I neither agreed nor refused. But how could there be a later for us? The next morning, seeing me push my luggage to the door early, Ethan proactively bought breakfast back. "I'll drive you later." I didn't speak, just sat down at the dining table and quietly ate breakfast. After finishing, just as we were about to leave, he suddenly looked down at his phone. Then, he said the words I had expected, "Sarah, something came up last minute, I can't take you." I didn't even need to think to know it must be Chloe calling him. I nodded, "Go ahead, take care of your business." Seeing my agreement, Ethan had no more reservations, turned, and walked out the door. As he was about to leave, he looked back at me again. "Tell me what day you're coming back, I'll pick you up then." After saying that, he didn't look back again. I watched his retreating figure gradually disappear, murmuring softly, "Ethan, I'm not coming back." I took one last look around the apartment I had lived in for 6 whole years. I remembered the curiosity and excitement when I first moved in, the helplessness and sadness when I was left alone in this house, and then it all transformed into the relief and release of deciding to leave. Finally, I left a note on the table. "Ethan, let's break up. I'm going home to get married." After doing all this, I pushed the suitcase that was already by the door, hailed a cab directly, and went to the airport. From now on, Ethan's life would no longer include Sarah. After several hours of travel, the plane finally landed in Denver. Pushing my suitcase with one hand, I used the other to check the message I'd received shortly before. "I'm at the airport. Have you landed yet?" "Just landed." The reply had barely been sent when I looked up and saw Ryan waiting in the arrivals hall. He wore a crisp shirt and slacks, gold-rimmed glasses perched on his nose, exuding an air of refined elegance with every move. He glanced down at his phone intermittently, then scanned the bustling crowd. The moment I emerged, he spotted me, waved, and stood up, walking towards me. I was struck by his appearance. I hadn't expected the mischievous, argumentative childhood friend who used to trail behind me to transform into this. "What, stunned?" A tall figure stopped in front of me, his voice laced with teasing laughter. "Once we get our marriage license, you can stare as long as you want." Realizing my lapse, my ears flushed red. I forced a calm expression, rolled my eyes at Ryan, and retorted instinctively, still as narcissistic as ever after all this time. He naturally took the suitcase from my hand, leading me towards the exit. I have the capital, why shouldn't I be narcissistic? I was momentarily speechless. Looking at his sharply defined features, I couldn't find a rebuttal. He really was handsome. Throughout our school years, he was always a prominent figure, top grades, good looks, and exactly the kind of roguishly handsome guy girls adored back then. He seemed like a playboy but was incredibly innocent. Whenever a girl confessed her feelings, he'd righteously refuse. We're students. Our most important task right now is to study hard. How can we think about these messy things? After high school graduation, we went our separate ways. Although I hadn't deliberately followed his news, I vaguely heard he never dated. Thinking about this, I suddenly looked up at him and asked, back then, everyone thought I was joking. Why did you agree to that seemingly absurd request? As I asked this, we had just reached the parking lot and stopped at his car. Ryan put my suitcase in the trunk, opened the passenger door for me, and waited until I was settled before getting into the driver's seat. He looked at me, raising an eyebrow. I thought you already knew. Knew what? I asked, completely clueless, frowning at him. Seeing my utter lack of awareness, Ryan sighed softly, turned his gaze back to the road, and didn't answer directly. The car slowly pulled out of the parking lot. Just when I thought he wouldn't answer, he suddenly spoke, his tone back to its usual nonchalance. It wasn't the first time you did something so absurd. Of course, I dared to believe you. He paused. Just then, the traffic light ahead flickered and turned red. The car slowed to a stop. He turned to look at me, a smile in his eyes. Besides, what if it was real? Then I would have really lucked out. His first sentence made me pause. Not the first time? My thoughts raced. The moment our eyes met, it clicked. Ryan was talking about when I stayed in Seattle for Ethan. And his next sentence confirmed this suspicion. It finally dawned on me. My ears turned a faint pink again, and I spoke somewhat unnaturally. You don't like me, do you? The light turned green, and the car started moving again. His soft laughter followed. Yes, I like you. Since a long, long time ago. Longer than you've liked that Ethan guy. Back when we were young and foolish, I thought just getting your attention would make you understand my feelings. Who knew you were such a blockhead, running off so far away, and even staying there for a man who didn't cherish you. But thankfully, I had enough patience to wait for you to come back to me. Ryan kept the final monologue hidden in his heart, but those 3 words, yes, I like you, were enough to leave me stunned. It wasn't until the car stopped in our apartment complex's parking lot that I finally snapped back to reality, murmuring, since when? This time he played coy, not answering directly. Guess? That familiar feeling washed over me again. Wordlessly, I opened the car door and got out. Ryan followed suit, took the suitcase from the trunk, locked the car, bypassed my outstretched hand, and headed straight for the elevator. Our families lived next door to each other, so heading home meant taking the same route. Inside the elevator, we stood in silence. I stared at my shoes, while he leaned leisurely against the elevator wall, watching my ears gradually turn red under his gaze. Ding! The elevator doors opened. Ryan walked me to my apartment door, but I stopped him from coming any closer. He understood. Girls get shy. A slight smile touched his lips. He reached out and ruffled my hair, then shrewdly started walking back towards his place before I could get mad. Before leaving, he didn't forget to remind me, in a couple of days, I'll bring Mom and Dad over to discuss our wedding plans. Little Sarah, you better be ready too. The silly nickname made the blush on my ears, which had just faded, reappear. I shot him a glare, took out my keys, and opened the door without responding further. Ryan didn't mind at all, cheerfully heading towards the stairwell. It was only 1 floor. Right now, he was so happy he could climb 20 floors without breaking a sweat. I dragged my suitcase inside. Having not been home for 6 whole years, I felt a strange sense of being a hesitant visitor in my own home. The living room was empty. The sound of the suitcase wheels rolling across the floor seemed exceptionally loud in the quiet space. Hearing the noise, my white-haired grandfather, thinking a burglar had broken in, rushed out wielding his cane, his voice booming, "Which little thief dares to break into my house? Sarah?" Before he could finish, he saw me standing in the living room, tears welling in my eyes. The cane fell to the floor with a thud. Grandpa didn't bother picking it up. His eyes instantly reddened, but he turned and walked back into his room. I dropped the suitcase handle and hurried after him, finally catching him just as he was about to lie back down on his bed. I threw my arms around him. "Grandpa, I missed you so much." Grandpa didn't believe it. The stubborn girl had said she was just going away for school and would visit during breaks. But he waited, and 6 years passed. He knew I was coming back soon, just not the exact date, only that it was sometime recently. So, he was only slightly surprised at first sight. But the news of my return had come from Ryan. This darn girl hadn't called him once. She must have long forgotten about this old man, yet here she was saying she missed him. Thinking this, Grandpa huffed, still not turning around, and even started trying to pry my arms off. But I held on tight, tears falling drop by drop onto his shoulder. Feeling the dampness on his shoulder, he finally sighed, stopped struggling, but his words remained sharp. Saying you missed me, yet you didn't come home for 6 whole years, leaving this old bag of bones here all alone. If it weren't for young Ryan thinking of me every day, you probably wouldn't even know when I died. His voice was thick with resentment. I quickly covered his mouth, shushing him repeatedly, my eyes filled with disapproval. Grandpa will live a long and healthy life. Don't say such unlucky things. But remembering what Grandpa had said earlier, guilt washed over me. I'm sorry, Grandpa. It's all Sarah's fault. Sarah won't leave anymore. I'll stay and keep Grandpa company always, okay? Hearing this, Grandpa quickly shook his head. Pa, what nonsense are you talking? Grandpa is still waiting for you to get married and have children. Only after seeing you happy with my own eyes, when Grandpa passes away and meets your grandma and parents, can I rest in peace. Grandpa, I told you not to say such unlucky things. Hearing Grandpa constantly talking like this made my heart ache even more. I knew Grandpa would leave me one day, but I desperately wished that day would come later, much later. After talking for a while, the atmosphere became less heavy. Grandpa looked at me, sighing with emotion. You've grown up, gotten thinner, and changed. No matter how Sarah changes, Sarah will always be Grandpa's granddaughter. I leaned against his shoulder, my mood finally calming down. Grandpa chuckled a few times, but then worried about my marriage again. Didn't you say you were about to get married before? Why did you suddenly come back? I shook my head, unwilling to elaborate on the matter. It didn't work out between us, so the wedding was cancelled. Seeing Grandpa about to worry again, I remembered what Ryan said when he left. My ears flushed slightly. After a moment's hesitation, I told Grandpa the truth. Ryan said he'll bring his parents over in a couple of days to discuss the wedding. The moment these words came out, Grandpa's eyes widened. His mind spun for a moment before finally registering what I had said. Then he burst out laughing. That boy waited patiently for years, and he actually got his chance. Meanwhile, back in Seattle, Ethan returned home 3 days later, late in the evening. He pushed open the door to darkness. Instinctively, he called my name, but time ticked by, and the apartment remained silent. Turning on the light revealed an empty room, unchanged from when he left. Only then did he remember I was on a business trip. Come to think of it, I hadn't contacted him at all these past few days. I was supposed to tell him when I'd be back so he could pick me up, but I hadn't said anything. Ethan walked towards the living room, pulling out his phone and finding our chat history. He immediately saw the countless messages I used to send him. Sometimes sharing funny things from work, sometimes sharing snippets of my life, sometimes cautiously asking if he'd be willing to spend time with me, sometimes complaining about unlucky things that happened. His replies were scarce, usually just got it, okay, or sometimes no reply at all. Yet, I seemed tireless, continuing to message him daily. But looking closely at the dates, the last message I sent him was over half a month ago. Had it really been that long since I contacted him? A flicker of unease crossed his mind. For the first time, he condescended to send me a message proactively. Is your work done? When are you coming back? The message was sent, but there was no reply. Anxious, he checked the time. It was already 11 p.m. Ethan finally breathed a sigh of relief, thinking, it must just be too late, that's why I hadn't seen it. With that thought, he put down his phone. But his peripheral vision caught a note on the table. Feeling slightly strange, he picked it up. The note had few words, but each one struck him like a heavy hammer blow to the heart. Ethan, let's break up. I'm going home to get married. As if illiterate, he turned the note over and over, reading it countless times, trying to find another sentence, something like, haha, scared you, didn't I? Just kidding. Then, he would definitely scold me harshly. How could I joke about something like breaking up and getting married? But no matter how many times he read it, the words on the note remained exactly the same, not one less, not one more. It seemed she was serious. Ethan's eyes instantly turned red. With trembling hands, he picked up his phone again, took a picture of the note, and sent it to me. Just as he was about to demand what this meant, he saw a large red exclamation mark appear next to the photo he had just sent. And below the photo, a line of small text appeared. The recipient has enabled friend verification. You are not their friend yet. Please send a friend request first. You can chat only after the recipient accepts the request. Ethan's mind went blank. It took him a long moment to realize she had deleted him. His head spun, but his hands were already moving, finding my number and dialing. After the dialing tone sounded for a short while, The electronic female voice announced that the recipient was currently on another call. Ethan froze again. She had just hung up on him? Nameless anger surged within him. But when he tried dialing again, the call wouldn't go through at all. He had been blocked. Ethan didn't understand. He had just paid a little more attention to Chloe. Did I really need to be so petty? He had clearly explained already. Chloe was his mentor's daughter, and she hadn't been doing well emotionally since her father's death. What was I so angry about? Besides, hadn't I already agreed to him spending time with Chloe this time? What tantrum was this now? Even at this moment, Ethan still believed I was just sulking. After all, I loved him so much, willing to settle in this unfamiliar city for him. How could I possibly just give up suddenly, leave here, and marry someone else? But Ethan never understood that my departure wasn't sudden, it was just that he had only finally noticed it now. Unable to contact me, he asked around in our university class group chat, but perhaps because it was indeed too late, no one replied. Dejectedly, he returned to the bedroom. As he prepared to wash up, he noticed that all the items once placed in pairs were now solitary. Opening the closet, the matching couple's outfits I had excitedly given him, which he had never worn once and kept tucked away, were all gone. He lay on the bed, staring blankly at the ceiling, his thoughts a tangled mess. How could I suddenly just leave? She must be angry, right? Fine, tomorrow, once he found out where I was, he'd apologize, coax me properly, and I'd obediently come back, right? Ethan wasn't sure, but right now, besides waiting, there was nothing he could do. He tossed and turned all night, unable to sleep, constantly checking his phone to see if anyone had replied. The next day at noon, someone finally responded. He checked the name, the group chat alias was Sophie, apparently one of my close friends. Ethan excitedly clicked on her message. It was a photo. But the moment he saw what the photo was, he felt struck by lightning. It was a wedding photo. In the picture, the woman in the white wedding dress, smiling at the groom, was me. And beside me, the groom had his arm around my waist, meeting my gaze, his eyes filled with tenderness and love. And that man wasn't him. He stared blankly at the photo, his mind empty, momentarily unsure of where he even was. Ding dong. Another message arrived. Are you looking for Sarah? She went back to her hometown a while ago to get married. Heard the wedding is next week. What do you think? Doesn't the groom look perfect with Sarah? Wedding next week? One piece of news after another hit Ethan unprepared. No, he didn't believe I would just marry someone else like this. Besides, I had only just gone back. Even if I were getting married, the date couldn't possibly be set so soon, could it? My sudden actions must be fake, just a way to provoke him, waiting for him to coax me back. Thinking this, as if receiving some encouragement, he quickly rallied. But after scrolling through his phone contacts a few times, he hesitated for a moment, then sent another message to Sophie. Do you know where Sarah is now? Ethan had initially planned to go find me directly. For days had passed since I left, I must be anxiously waiting for him. But as he prepared to book a flight, he realized he couldn't remember where I was originally from. On the other end, Sophie saw this message and scoffed. Now she understood why I, after loving Ethan for so many years and finally seeming on the verge of happiness, had suddenly given up and left. They had been together for 6 years. I gave up everything to stay in Seattle for him, yet he didn't even know where I was from. She heard that not long ago, he had even pushed me towards an attacker to save another woman. Even if people were already positioned nearby, so what? It didn't change the fact that in his heart, I was never his priority. She silently cursed him. Her reply became sharp. Why are you asking? What, planning to crash the wedding? Give me a break. You didn't cherish her when she was beside you. Now, please just stay as far away from Sarah as possible. Ethan frowned deeply. Seeing he couldn't get any information from her, he simply exited the chat. I received Ethan's call 3 days before the wedding. Since I had already blocked his number, when I saw the unfamiliar number, I answered without much thought. But the next second, I regretted it. Sarah, I've been looking for you for so long. You finally answered my call. Hearing Ethan's voice, I remained silent, about to hang up without hesitation. But Ethan, as if anticipating my move, quickly spoke to stop me. Sarah, don't hang up yet. I know I made you angry recently. Tell me where you are, I'll come find you, okay? He tried his best to make his voice sound gentle, hoping I would believe he was genuinely apologizing. Until another voice came through the phone, tinged with a hint of grievance. Wife, whose call is it? Taking so long? The term wife struck Ethan like a thunderbolt. What made him even more incredulous was that I didn't refute it, simply agreeing, no one important. Ethan felt for the first time that words could truly kill. Unimportant. Just those two simple words made his ears ring loudly. He couldn't hear anything else we said, didn't even know when the call ended. He suddenly remembered, not long ago when my phone was left in the living room, he had seen someone call me whose contact name was hubby. How did he dismiss that later? Oh, right, Chloe had said that we girls do call our best friends hubby. But thinking back now, it all made sense. That person wasn't some best friend at all, but the man whose voice he just heard. Rage clouded his mind, but Ethan was helpless now. He didn't even need to try again to know this number would surely be blocked too. But he hadn't even agreed to break up. How could I just find someone else? Why did this relationship have to start when I said I liked him, and end just because I wanted to give up? His eyes darkened, only one thought remaining in his mind: he wouldn't give up just like this. Ethan went to find my university class president and managed to get my home address from him. Just as he was preparing to leave, his phone suddenly rang. He took it out, the screen displayed Chloe's name prominently. After a moment's hesitation, he ultimately turned around and headed towards Chloe's location first. He thought, it's okay, he would quickly handle things here, then go straight to find me. He wouldn't let me marry someone else. But Ethan hadn't expected this delay would cost him 3 days. By the time he finished dealing with Chloe's matters, he discovered it was already the day I had set for my wedding. 3 days passed in the blink of an eye. Ryan and I chose a hotel not far from home for our wedding reception. Time was tight, but Ryan didn't cut corners because of it. Wedding photos, reception, dress, rings, marital home, he prepared everything needed for a wedding meticulously. On the wedding day, Ryan and I went to the hotel early to change into our wedding attire and get makeup done. He entrusted the task of greeting guests entirely to his parents, while he stayed by my side, not leaving for a moment. In front of the vanity mirror, I watched Ryan staring intently at me, somewhat curious. Ryan, you prepared all this so thoroughly. You didn't just start after I came back, did you? Hearing my question, he cleared his throat softly, averting his gaze. Of course, it wasn't prepared last minute. He had been planning this for a long time. The marital home, wedding dress, rings, they were all prepared long ago. If I were to marry someone else, he would never bring these things out. If I married him, he would present them to me immediately. The other things were what he started preparing from the day I said I'd switch grooms. Although Ryan didn't say it, I knew the answer from the way he averted his gaze. But this only made me more curious. He admitted he liked me but refused to say when it started. It always made me feel like there was something else I didn't know. Ryan turned back and saw my expression, knowing I must be overthinking again. Coincidentally, the makeup artist finished the bridal makeup, gathering her tools while praising me. Miss Collins, your skin is amazing. Barely needed any makeup. This is honestly the easiest bridal makeup I've done in my 10+ years. He walked over and placed a light kiss on my lips. It was brief, but it made my face instantly flush crimson. Ryan looked satisfyingly at my shy expression, a wide grin spreading across his face. Of course. Look whose wife this is. The next second, I lightly punched his chest. Ryan. Wife, are you trying to murder your husband? He clutched his chest, feigning pain, which actually scared me into thinking I had hit him too hard. But just as I reached out to check if he was okay, he grabbed my hand, placed a kiss on the back of it. Wife, why are you still calling me by my full name? He pretended to be hurt, his exaggerated expression making me roll my eyes good-naturedly. The makeup artist watched our playful banter and couldn't help but chuckle. After reminding us not to mess up the makeup, she left the dressing room, giving the newlyweds some space. We joked around for a little longer. Until it was almost time for the ceremony, Ryan left the dressing room first. Just then, my phone, left on the side, started ringing. Seeing the unlabeled number flashing on the screen, my first reaction was Ethan, and I instinctively declined the call. But shortly after hanging up, the same number called again. Thinking about it, not every unknown caller had to be him. There was really no need for me to avoid all unknown numbers just because of one Ethan. So, I answered. The voice on the other end was indeed unfamiliar. Hello, is this Miss Sarah Collins? I replied with a quiet waiting for the caller to state their purpose. Confirming my identity, the caller got straight to the point. This is the ER at Denver General Hospital. Your boyfriend, Mr. Ethan Evans, was in a car accident due to speeding. His condition isn't good right now. Could you come to Denver General? Hearing this, I froze for a moment, taking a while to process what was said. Ethan came to Denver? And got into a car accident because of speeding? Hello, Miss Collins, are you still there? The nurse's voice prompted again as silence lingered, pulling me back to reality. I spoke, but directly refused. I'm sorry, we've already broken up. Today is my wedding day, I don't have time to go. Please see if you can contact anyone else. After saying that, I hung up directly. Although I vaguely guessed Ethan came to Denver likely because of me, but, just as I said, we had already broken up. His affairs were no longer my concern. He had plenty of people he could contact, he didn't need me. Until the disconnected dial tone sounded, the nurse responsible for contacting relatives looked somewhat awkward. Just then, the doctor came again asking if the family had been reached. The nurse shook her head and continued making calls. Who would have thought? The number listed as girlfriend in the patient's phone belonged to someone who had not only broken up with him but was even getting married that very day. By the time they reached Ethan's parents, it was an hour later. Learning their son was in a car accident, that both legs required amputation due to severe crush injuries damaging the nerves leading to necrosis and localized gangrene, and that his right-hand tendons were slashed by debris, although emergency surgery had stopped further deterioration, he likely wouldn't be able to lift heavy objects or perform fine motor tasks anymore. The couple felt struck by lightning and immediately booked flights to Denver. With family contacted and consent obtained, the doctors confidently prepared for surgery. Meanwhile, at the wedding reception, the hall was filled with guests. Wearing my floor-length wedding gown, I walked down the aisle arm in arm with Grandpa, step by step, towards Ryan waiting on the stage. Although he always said he hoped his granddaughter would find someone trustworthy soon, when the day truly arrived, Grandpa couldn't help but tear up. Grandpa, why are you crying? This is a happy day. Though I said that, seeing Grandpa's red-rimmed eyes, I couldn't help but tear up too. I forced back the rising lump in my throat and smiled at him. Besides, I'm not marrying far away. Even after getting married, I can still come back and visit you often. Grandpa saw the tears in my eyes too, patted my hand. Okay, no crying. Neither of us will cry. The long aisle seemed so short at this moment. Grandpa placed my hand in Ryan's, his voice earnest. Ryan, my boy, I've watched you grow up too. I trust your character, and I hope you won't betray my trust. Treat Sarah well. From now on, I entrust Sarah to you. He promised not to cry, but by the end, Grandpa's voice still choked with emotion. Time spares no one. In the blink of an eye, he had become an old man. The little girl who used to playfully sit on his lap and make him laugh had grown up and was getting married. Although the two families lived close by, giving away his granddaughter still filled his heart with both joy and reluctance. Ryan nodded solemnly, completely devoid of his usual playful demeanor. He held my hand tightly, his eyes filled with tenderness as he looked at me. Grandpa, rest assured. I will take good care of Sarah. I will definitely not disappoint your expectations, nor will I disappoint Sarah. Vows, exchange of rings, kiss. Amidst the blessings of all the guests, Ryan and I officially became husband and wife. Sarah, I finally married you. Chloe arrived at Denver General Hospital with Ethan's parents that afternoon. Seeing her son lying unconscious on the hospital bed, Mrs. Evans could no longer contain her grief. Her son was so outstanding, achieving the position of associate chief physician at such a young age. When he woke up, how could she tell him he would never be able to stand at an operating table again? But no matter how difficult, reality had to be faced. Ethan woke up a week later. When he opened his eyes, his parents were there, Chloe was there, but the one person he most wanted to see was missing. Dad. Mom, have you seen Sarah? Did she come to see me? Waking up from severe injuries, Ethan's breathing was still unsteady, his speech broken. Hearing his question, Mr. and Mrs. Evans were already displeased. They endured and endured, barely managing not to lash out at him then and there. But Chloe, her eyes brimming with tears, leaned tearfully against his bedside and directly showed him my social media posts from the past few days, her voice filled with righteous indignation. You ended up like this because of her. Why are you still thinking about her? She's been busy getting married and going on her honeymoon these past few days, having the time of her life. How could she possibly remember to come see you? She was unwilling to see Ethan reconcile with me. Now, she spared no effort to sow discord, wanting Ethan to be disappointed in me. She conveniently forgot he had just woken up and couldn't handle agitation. Before Mr. and Mrs. Evans could stop her, Ethan had already seen the post I made on the day of his accident, the picture of the bright red marriage certificate with the names Sarah Collins and Ryan Miller printed on it. He stared fixedly at the phone screen, his eyes bloodshot, his heart filled with disbelief. How could this be? How could this be? I actually got a marriage license with someone else, got married. Could I really abandon our relationship so easily? Then what did our 6 years mean? He didn't understand, couldn't believe it. He forced himself to sit up, wanting to go find me. But this movement made him freeze completely. Ethan looked at the gruesome scar on his wrist, his heart sinking violently. His eyes turned scarlet, both for his right hand that felt unnatural when he tried to use it, and for the leg he felt nothing in when he tried to sit up. With trembling hands, he tried to lift the blanket covering him, but Mr. and Mrs. Evans held it down firmly. Seeing his parents' grief-stricken faces, shaking their heads, pleading with him not to look, how could he not understand? He was a doctor himself. He hadn't lost consciousness immediately after the accident. Ethan had seen his injuries. It was just that upon waking, his memory was trying to shield him from the reality. His voice choked. He ignored Chloe, who had been pushed aside, looking only at his parents, trying to elicit a different answer from them than the one he feared. Dad, Mom, my leg, and my hand, they're still okay, right? But they remained silent, still holding down the blanket, preventing him from looking. His mother, being more emotional, was already shedding large tears. As they remained deadlocked, Chloe finally noticed the tense atmosphere. She quietly hid her phone and offered comfort. "It's okay, Ethan. You'll get better. Chloe will always be here with you." Her words were meant to soothe, but they only ignited the smoldering anger within Ethan. He violently pushed Chloe away. Caught off guard, she stumbled backward. Ah! Chloe's head hit a nearby stool, and she collapsed onto the floor, but this no longer evoked any pity from him. "If it weren't for you, Sarah would never have left me. If it weren't for you, how would I have ended up like this? Get out now." His furious roar made her heart bleed, her face paling, yet she stubbornly refused to leave. But Mr. and Mrs. Evans' expressions changed drastically upon hearing Ethan's words. What does that mean? Caught having revealed a crucial detail, Ethan froze. After a long pause, he slumped back onto the bed, dejectedly recounting the events of the recent past. Hearing the full story, learning their son had planned to have a child with another woman right before his wedding, Mr. and Mrs. Evans' faces went through several shifts before they shook their heads, disappointed yet pained. "Ethan, you've never caused us any worry since you were little. How could you do something so senseless right at this critical time?" Ethan didn't answer them, just covered his face with his hands, muffled sobs escaping. He didn't know why he had done such a thing either. He just thought, "I loved him, that I would absolutely never leave him." Seeing her son like this, Mrs. Evans couldn't help but feel her heart ache again, and inevitably started blaming me. "Even if you made a mistake in this matter, you still ended up like this trying to see her. She's being too heartless." Ethan wanted to argue, but the words stuck in his throat. He couldn't help but wonder too. Yes, he was in this state, yet I wasn't even willing to come see him once. Pushed aside by everyone, Chloe felt a faint pain emanating from her lower abdomen. She reached out and grabbed Mrs. Evans's sleeve, her eyes wide with panic. "The baby. Auntie, my baby." Her words stunned everyone present. Ethan's mind went blank. He blurted out instinctively, "What baby?" She had been with him these past days, how could she be pregnant? "Half a month ago, I went to the IVF doctor, used the sample you left at the hospital, and did the IVF myself. Ethan, I really wanted to have a child with you." Chloe's pale face reminded Mr. and Mrs. Evans of Ethan's push just moments ago. They panicked too, quickly helping her up to find a doctor, leaving Ethan alone on the bed, his thoughts a chaotic jumble. Chloe's baby was his? If she gave birth to this child, would I truly never forgive him? Thinking this, his gaze darkened. He made up his mind, this child absolutely could not be kept. He had figured out how to handle it, but things didn't go as planned. Not only did he fail to get rid of the child, but he also couldn't even drive Chloe away. "Dad, Mom, I won't marry her." Ethan lay on the hospital bed, eyes closed tight, ignoring his parents' attempts to persuade him. The couple felt helpless. "Why are you being so stubborn? Chloe is carrying your child, after all, and now you're like this. Someone needs to take care of you, right? Are you still thinking Sarah will come back? She's already gotten her license and had a wedding with someone else. What are you still waiting for?" He wasn't ignorant of the logic his parents presented, he just felt unwilling to accept it. Before, Ethan thought his feelings for me were mostly just habit. But only after I left him and married someone else did his bleeding heart tell him, "No, Ethan, you love her. You can't live without her." But just as his father said, I had already gotten married to someone else. Waiting any longer would be futile. He clenched his fists tightly, yet the word okay refused to leave his lips. How could he resign himself to this fate? He was so close, just a little bit closer, and he could have married me. Why did things end up like this? I was unaware of Ethan's thoughts. After a month-long honeymoon, Ryan and I returned to Denver. We arrived back in early September, just as schools were welcoming floods of students. On the first official day of school, Ryan stood by the door while I stood before him, tying his tie. He looked down, watching me reluctantly pat his tie finally into place. All right. I really don't know why you insist on dressing so formally when casual clothes are perfectly fine. But Ryan looked disapproving, pointing to his cheek until I rolled my eyes and planted a kiss there. Only then did he beam. Otherwise, how can I show my colleagues and students how outstanding and skillful my wife is? I hesitated several times, wanting to say something, but ended up just pushing him out the door with mild exasperation. Fine, just hurry up and get to the university. I really don't know if the University of Denver regrets hiring you as a professor. Hiring such an outstanding professor like me, Denver should feel lucky. Outstanding graduate and outstanding lecturer. Ryan raised his eyebrows proudly, not forgetting to praise himself. All right, we know you're outstanding. You should get going to the university now, professor. Don't let the students arrive on time on the first day while their professor is late. Pushed out the door, Ryan didn't mind my actions, turning around quite contentedly and heading off. A rumor had recently started circulating at the University of Denver. The notoriously charming but tough professor had gotten married, and his mood had improved drastically. He was smiling so much every day his mouth nearly reached his ears. I only found out later when I went to Denver to find him. Since getting married, he basically flaunted his wedding ring every single day. His usual routine involved comments like, You ask why I'm dressed so formally today? Oh, because my wife likes it. You say my lunch smells amazing today? Of course, my wife's cooking is superb. What are my plans for tomorrow? Going on a date with my wife, naturally. At this point, I was still oblivious to all this, contemplating whether I should start looking for a new job, when a knock sounded on the door. Puzzled, I got up to open it. The delivery person confirmed the recipient and handed me a package. After signing for it, I went back to my room and opened it. Inside was just a single red invitation card. I took it out and opened it. The first thing that caught my eye were the two names at the top. Ethan Evans, Chloe Davis. They really did end up together. I just didn't know why their wedding invitation was sent to me. To show off? Or to tell me that even if I left, he could find someone else? But what did that have to do with me? I didn't care who he was marrying now. I tossed the invitation aside, paying it no mind, and went back to my own business. It wasn't until Ryan came home in the afternoon and saw the invitation lying on the floor that he picked it up. Whose invitation is this? Your ex-boyfriend? Took him long enough. He casually opened the invitation, saw the names, and raised an eyebrow. I shrugged, taking the invitation from his hand, intending to throw it in the trash. Don't worry about them. It's ridiculous. He raised his hand, holding the invitation high, dodging my grasp. A mischievous grin spread across his face as he looked at me, his voice full of interest. Since they sincerely invited us, let's go check it out, shall we? He also wanted to see what kind of motive this Ethan had for sending us an invitation at this time. The wedding date was set for the following month. They had more time to prepare than Ryan and I did for our wedding, yet the final result was still underwhelming. I hadn't expected to be back in Seattle so soon, and with Ryan, no less. Many people attending the reception also knew me and knew about our past. Seeing me enter arm in arm with another man now sparked murmurs among the guests. I really didn't expect that in just 3 or 4 months, the two people we all thought would definitely get married ended up marrying other people. One person looked at Ryan and me, who had found a random place to sit, and couldn't help but sigh. The person sitting next to him chuckled. Well, tell me, did they get married or not? The first speaker was speechless for a moment, but then, thinking about it, also started laughing. When I first heard Sarah Collins married someone else, I thought she was the one who changed her mind. But looking at it now, she was probably just heartbroken. Another person joined their conversation, immediately piquing the first two's interest. How so? How so? I heard this wedding for Ethan was rushed because the woman is pregnant with his child, already over 3 months along. What? 3 months? Calculating back, wasn't Ethan still with Sarah then? I don't know. Didn't Sarah post that thing about switching grooms back then? Maybe it was because of this. The voices weren't too loud, but perhaps because we weren't far, I couldn't hear clearly, though I did catch the part about Chloe being pregnant. I scoffed inwardly. No wonder they dared to send me an invitation, it was because she was pregnant. But 3 months, must have been from when they said they were going to do the IVF, lying to me about the professor's death stopping them. Ryan squeezed my hand. I turned and saw his somewhat worried, somewhat aggrieved expression. I smiled and shook my head, signaling him not to worry. Then I beckoned him closer, asking him to lower his head. Though puzzled, he complied. The moment he lowered his head, he felt a soft, fleeting touch on his cheek. His eyes widened abruptly as he turned back to look at me. I had already averted my gaze, refusing to meet his eyes. Only my flushed earlobes betrayed the fact that my heart wasn't calm either. Not far away, Ethan took all of this in, his heart a mix of complex emotions. Judging by our current interaction, he couldn't even console himself with the thought that I had chosen someone else just to spite him. It seemed I genuinely liked that person. I accepted that man's presence, was even willing to initiate closeness. Unlike when we were together, it wasn't him standing still waiting for me to come to him, but a mutual approach. I had truly moved towards a future without him, while he remained trapped in a past with me. Chloe, clad in a cumbersome wedding dress, caught up, her gaze following his, instantly spotting Ryan and me. We had our heads bowed, seemingly whispering secrets, the air around us practically shimmering with pink bubbles, a stark contrast to the superficial harmony between her and Ethan. Chloe forcefully suppressed the jealousy and resentment in her heart, managing a strained smile. "Ethan, it's almost time to go on stage. You should go get ready first." As she spoke, she reached out to push his wheelchair, but his gaze lingered on us, unwilling to leave. Ethan didn't know if this would be the last time he saw me. He only knew that after today's wedding, there was no longer any possibility between us. He lowered his head, looking at the empty pant leg and the hideous scar on his right hand. A tidal wave of grief swept over him, ravaging his heart, yet he lacked even the courage to stop Chloe from pushing him away, preventing him from seeing me. He had become a complete wreck. Even without this wedding, even if I hadn't married someone else, surely, I wouldn't still like a wreck like him. When I felt his gaze and looked up, I saw Ethan being pushed away by Chloe. I paused, surprised to see him in a wheelchair. Was it because of that car accident earlier? Was he injured that severely? My guess was confirmed when the groom came onto the stage. Since Ethan's accident, I hadn't really heard much news about him. Seeing him again now, the phrase "things have changed" felt strikingly apparent. I couldn't tell if he had other injuries, but even with my limited medical knowledge, I knew that in his current state, he likely couldn't return to being a doctor. For a moment, I felt a pang of wistfulness. In just 3 short months, things had changed so drastically. On stage, Ethan looked gloomy, his face devoid of any wedding joy, more like someone was millions in debt to him. Chloe's mother walked her down the aisle. Her face showed none of the usual maternal pride and bittersweet feelings of giving away her daughter, only deep worry. When she first learned Chloe was pregnant with Ethan's child, she was equally surprised, but her immediate reaction was to want her to terminate the pregnancy. Although Ethan and I had already separated then, she could see that Ethan's heart still belonged to me. In such circumstances, Chloe trying to tie Ethan down with a child was undoubtedly asking for trouble. Moreover, with him now in this condition, Mrs. Davis was deeply concerned about potential changes in Ethan's mental state. But what surprised her most was that Ethan had actually agreed to hold the wedding. Remembering they were currently at the wedding, Mrs. Davis controlled her expression, trying to appear more natural. She placed Chloe's hand in Ethan's, like any parent entrusting their daughter to the groom at a wedding, hoping Ethan would treat Chloe well. But he didn't reach out, nor did he respond to Mrs. Davis's words. Just as Mrs. Davis's face grew increasingly unpleasant, Chloe saved the situation by taking the initiative, walking towards Ethan, and pushing his wheelchair to stand together before the officiant. Despite the hiccup, the ceremony proceeded according to rehearsal. Due to Ethan's physical condition, many segments were cut, but the ring exchange couldn't be omitted. A flower girl brought the rings. Ethan took one, and just as he was about to place it on Chloe's finger, he stared blankly at the diamond ring. It was the wedding ring he and I had chosen together for our wedding. Now the wedding was finally happening, but his bride was no longer me. Chloe held out her hand, the smile on her face almost freezing. Then she heard him softly call out a name, "Sarah, will you marry me?" Her smile completely crumbled. But with so many eyes watching, she wouldn't allow herself such a humiliating exit. She forced a smile uglier than tears and reminded him quietly, "Ethan, it's time to exchange rings." Only then did Ethan snap back to reality, placing the ill-fitting ring onto her ring finger. In the audience, I noticed his distraction and found myself increasingly unable to understand Ethan. Perhaps it truly was a case of the unattainable is coveted, the cherished taken for granted. When I still loved Ethan, I never felt his love in his reactions. He took my kindness for granted and reserved his gentlest side for Chloe. Now he got what he wanted, I left, and he married Chloe, yet he put on this act of eternal loss of love. Who was he trying to fool? Thinking this, I suddenly remembered the fortune-telling card I drew at the class reunion to change the subject. Expectations lead to disappointment, seeking nothing leads to fulfillment. I once wholeheartedly expected to build a good life with Ethan, to start a family with him. But back then, I was always the first one he sacrificed. Later, my heart died towards him. Marrying Ryan was partly out of spite, partly to reassure Grandpa. I had considered just being a respectful but distant couple with Ryan, never expecting anything more. Yet Ryan gave me love overflowing. My fortune card came true. What about Ethan's eternal loss of love? Judging by his current behavior, it seemed his had also come true. But I didn't believe he loved me. His feelings towards me felt more like habit, the habit of me chasing him, giving unconditionally, asking for nothing in return, without complaint. So now that I left, he claimed he loved me. Who would believe that? I didn't stay for the entire wedding. Midway through, I felt nauseous and left early with Ryan. I initially thought it was just stuffy with too many people at the reception, figuring a walk outside might help, but once outside, the vomiting got worse. Although I insisted I was fine, Ryan was worried and took me to the hospital anyway. Transferred from the ER to obstetrics, asked again about the date of my last period, Ryan and I belatedly realized my period was already half a month late. Has it ever been this late before? The doctor's question brought me back. I shook my head. While never perfectly regular, it had never been delayed this long. To be safe, I underwent specific tests. When I received the confirmation report, pregnant, for weeks, it still felt surreal. Ryan, am I really pregnant? Ryan cupped my face, planting a firm kiss on my lips, grinning from ear to ear. Wife, I'm going to be a dad. His sudden kiss caught me completely off guard. My cheeks flushed instantly crimson. I quickly pushed him away. What are you doing? We're still in the hospital. Fortunately, such displays weren't uncommon in the OB department. We blended right in. At that moment, neither of us had any desire to linger in Seattle. We immediately bought plane tickets back to Denver. Ryan went upstairs to tell his parents the news, while I went back to my place first, wanting to share the happy news with Grandpa. As soon as I entered, the apartment was eerily quiet. My joyful calls received no answer. A sudden jolt went through my heart. I quickly pushed open the bedroom door and saw Grandpa collapsed on the floor, unresponsive no matter how I called his name. With trembling hands, I took out my phone, first dialing 911 for an ambulance, then calling Ryan. Grandpa collapsed. My tear-choked voice barely managed 5 words before Ryan's family rushed downstairs in alarm. When the ambulance arrived, we all went to the hospital together. Waiting outside the operating room, Ryan held me as I sobbed uncontrollably in his arms, gently comforting me. Grandpa will be fine. You have the baby to think about, too. You need to stay calm, otherwise Grandpa will worry about you when he wakes up. I knew I shouldn't get too emotional right now, but the image of finding Grandpa motionless on the floor kept replaying, making it hard to control myself. I cried, and Ryan's parents also felt guilty. Grandpa usually lived alone, and they typically helped check on him. Who could have imagined something like this happening after just one day of not seeing him? Finally, the red light above the operating room turned green, and the doctor emerged, unfazed by the typically emotional families waiting outside. Luckily, he was brought in promptly. The resuscitation was successful. But the old gentleman is weak and needs to stay hospitalized for observation for a while. Hearing this, my emotions finally began to stabilize. Ryan's parents went to handle the payment, while Ryan stayed with me, following Grandpa directly to the ward. Grandpa woke up on the 3rd day. Seeing my guilt-ridden face, he just sighed, gently wiping away my tears. Grandpa's getting old, useless now. Just a fall caused such a big fuss. I held Grandpa's wrinkled hand, shaking my head repeatedly. Grandpa isn't old at all. Grandpa is going to live for a long, long time, see the baby born, and watch the baby grow up. Hearing the word baby, Grandpa finally perked up a bit. Grandpa's going to be a great grandpa? Then Grandpa really needs to try hard to live a bit longer. Just like Sarah said, watch my great-grandchild be born, grow up. When I was 7 months pregnant, my friends from Seattle brought me the latest news. Chloe had given birth, but tragically, The baby was diagnosed with hemolytic disease right after birth. What shocked them even more was the baby's blood type. Chloe was type O, Ethan was type B, yet they had a type A baby. Apparently, on the day the baby was born, the entire Evans family left the hospital with grim faces. Although Ethan already disliked Chloe, the reason he agreed to marry her was the baby she carried. Who knew that after the baby was born, it turned out not to be his? Chloe hadn't even finished her postpartum confinement period before she stormed into the IVF clinic where they did the procedure. After raising hell, she discovered that the nurse responsible for coding had made a mistake, mixing up the samples during her IVF procedure, leading to this whole fiasco. After the incident, the hospital fired the nurse, but the Evans family was no longer willing to accept Chloe. Ethan was already destined to spend the rest of his life in a wheelchair, and the injury to his hand meant he could never hold a scalpel again. If he also had to raise someone else's child, wouldn't he become the laughingstock of everyone? Ethan's parents couldn't accept this, and neither could Ethan. But because of this, a flicker of hope suddenly ignited within him. The child wasn't his, he hadn't had a child with another woman. Did that mean he could still seek my forgiveness? But the immediate priority was divorcing Chloe. However, the more anxious he became, the more things moved in the opposite direction of his wishes. Chloe had just given birth, she refused to divorce, so Ethan couldn't file for divorce immediately. Although the child wasn't Ethan's, Ethan couldn't prove the child was a result of infidelity. In fact, Chloe was also a victim in this matter. Thus, he could only wait. 6 months was an agonizingly long time. While waiting, he received the news that I had given birth to a daughter for Ryan. That day, he couldn't hold back any longer. He bought a ticket for the earliest flight and rushed to Denver. Ethan arrived at Denver General Hospital around 8 p.m. When he appeared before me, dusty from travel, I almost didn't recognize him. Only when he spoke, his voice hoarse, calling my name, did I finally connect the haggard man before me with the renowned Dr. Evans from Seattle General Hospital years ago. I glanced behind him, no one else was there. I looked at him curiously. "You came alone?" Ethan nodded. Since the amputation, he rarely went out. Only this time, because it was to see me, did he sneak out. It was his first time traveling alone, and a long distance at that, since becoming disabled. He encountered many difficulties along the way. Steps his wheelchair couldn't ascend, pedestrian crossings blocked by narrow bollards trapping him on the wrong side, the embarrassment of struggling uphill, rolling back 3 steps for every one forward due to his unfamiliarity with the wheelchair. But all the exhaustion vanished the moment he saw me. Though still apprehensive, his eyes couldn't help but flicker with hope. He looked at me and finally voiced the plea he had held in his heart for so long. "Sarah, I didn't have a child with Chloe. Can you still forgive me?" The words had just left his mouth when his wheelchair was suddenly pulled backward by an unseen force, sliding involuntarily away. A clearly displeased Ryan walked past him and sat down beside my bed. "Mr. Evans, in what capacity are you saying this? As the ex-boyfriend who failed Sarah, as Chloe's current husband, or as a shameless person trying to exploit a disability for sympathy?" Ethan was choked by his words, momentarily unsure how to respond. But Ryan didn't let him off the hook due to his silence. "Besides, trying to steal someone's wife right in front of me, have you forgotten Sarah is already married to me? Showing up here late at night looking for Sarah, what are you trying to do? Become the third party breaking up a family?" I never knew the once famous Dr. Evans from Seattle General was a man of such low character. Oh, right, someone capable of planning IVF with another woman right before his wedding. Doing something like this doesn't seem so surprising after all. He was bombarded until his face turned purple, then white. Finally, as Ryan's insults grew harsher, he couldn't take it anymore and interrupted, his face grim. "This is between Sarah and me. What does it have to do with you?" Ryan scoffed at his words. Just as he was about to retort further, I cut in first. "You're being strange. Ryan is my husband. You're harassing his wife, how does it not concern him?" My words elicited starkly different reactions from the two men. Ryan was instantly placated, sitting obediently beside me, savoring the husband I had just called him. It wasn't often he heard me say that, especially not as a public defense in front of a rival. The opposite reaction came from Ethan. Ryan's slander didn't compare to the damaging blow of my single sentence of partiality. Ethan's face instantly paled, his eyes filled with disbelief, his voice involuntarily rose. "You're defending him? You actually..." His sentence was cut off by the sound of a baby crying. Only then did he suddenly remember the news that had brought him here. I had given birth to a daughter, Ryan's daughter. He finally realized what a fool he had just made of himself, what stupid words he had uttered. Watching me, who had just been sharp-tongued towards him, instantly turn and gently lift the baby beside me at the first cry, cooing softly until she fell asleep again, then sparing a moment to glare at Ethan whose raised voice had woken her, it all hit him. Once the baby was sound asleep again, I carefully laid her down, then turned and directly told Ethan to leave. "You're not welcome here, Ethan. Please go." Ethan left the hospital, utterly dejected. A round moon hung in the dark night sky. He suddenly recalled that his first meeting with me was also on such a full moon night. I was cradling a dying kitten, frantic because all the nearby vet clinics were closed, desperately asking where I could get help for the little creature. After finally finding a clinic that was still open, I started running without looking up, and crashed right into his arms. I apologized profusely. He saw the kitten in my arms, understood the situation, and took me to the hospital with him. Unfortunately, the kitten was too small and ultimately couldn't be saved. Afterwards, I carefully chose a burial spot for the kitten and cried silently for a long time. And then, somehow, I started clinging to him, saying I liked him. He didn't accept my affections, but I was relentless, coming up with all sorts of antics. Ethan got used to my presence. When I suddenly disappeared, then reappeared holding another man's hand, he actually panicked for a moment. But seeing the feelings for him still so evident in my eyes, he sensed I was just playing hard to get, trying to capture his attention. Later, we naturally got together. But then his mentor's health deteriorated. He was grateful for his mentor's guidance, so when he learned the mentor's biggest worry was his daughter Chloe, he started taking extra care of her. He just wanted to repay his mentor's kindness. He never actually liked Chloe. He never intended to betray me, yet we ended up going our separate ways. He had been too confident, assuming I would never leave him, forgetting that nothing in this world is truly forever, that unrequited effort cannot last indefinitely. He was wrong, but he understood too late. Ethan pushed his wheelchair away from the hospital, his figure appearing thin and desolate. And ahead of him stood Chloe, pale-faced but stubbornly waiting. Seeing him emerge, she offered a smile. "Ethan, I'm here to take you home. Ethan, I've come this far for you. I will never let go. Even in death, I will be entangled with you." Inside the hospital room, Ryan stared intently at our daughter's peaceful sleeping face, utterly content. I nudged his shoulder. When he looked up questioningly, I whispered, "Have you picked a name for our daughter yet?" "Not yet. Mom, Dad, and I all want Grandpa to choose her formal name. We can pick a nickname ourselves. How about that?" He shook his head, explaining their plan and asking for my opinion. I thought about it, nodded, then asked what nicknames he had considered. Ryan shook his head again. "Mom and Dad didn't like the names I came up with. They said you should choose." Hearing this, I became genuinely curious about his suggestions. His next words made me wholeheartedly agree with his parents. Bubbles, Sparkle, Lammy. I ignored the pleading look in his eyes. Animals or sparkly things, if we called her that, our daughter would probably suffer from low self-esteem for years. "Let's just call her Annie," I decided firmly. Truthfully, I wasn't great at naming either, but at least Annie wouldn't be a mistake. The next day, the nickname Annie was officially confirmed. Grandpa's health had improved considerably during this time. Hearing he had the honor of naming his great-granddaughter made him overjoyed. He stayed up all night researching and came up with a name. Sophia Grace. Sophia, representing wisdom, and grace, a classic virtue. I loved the name. No one mentioned what happened the previous night. After all, the past shouldn't always be dwelled upon. People always need to look forward.